Removing geopathic stress can be done from anywhere in the world. I work with a lot of clients that are international. I work from my home here in the Yorkshire Dales in England, and what I want to show you today is the way that we might dowse to access information about a house that is all the way over in Australia. Hello there, my name's Tim Walter. I'm a house healer and alternative life coach. About a month ago or so we started looking at the detrimental energy that was in a real client's house in Australia, and what we highlighted in that program was some detrimental water flows and some detrimental earth energy flows. Now there are a couple of other things that are usually detrimental for most clients, and those are technopathic stress, so that's EMF, and emotional energy spots. And I'm going to show you the process of looking for those, which is very similar to the earlier program, but what we discover might be more significant for you as a house owner. And this is something that you can do in your own home as you go along and you learn the process of dowsing. So hopefully you'll find this as interesting as you did the first one. So we start dowsing, running the pendulum backwards and forwards in a straight line in the search position. So I'm not going to explain any more about the dowsing because that's all in the previous video program. So what we're going to do is just tune in. So we're looking for detrimental EMF, which we sometimes call technopathic stress. So this is technology-based energy fields emanating from electrical items, usually electrical items. Okay, so we've got five items. So we're going to look for those 5 items, and the way to look for those 5 items is by running the finger along an axis and then going down the other axis and waiting for a response from the pendulum as we do so. So we set the pendulum running in a forward and backward search position, looking for the first detrimental item. Of geopathic stress. When you get a positive response, my positive response is it's swinging in a clockwise direction, and now I'm going to move down here. It's very close, yeah, very close. So there's something here, right here. So I'm going to put a mark here, which indicates, I usually use the upside down T in a triangle, indicating technopathic stress. Same process, second one. Okay, so it's not unusual to find these right on earth energy lines, because both water lines and earth energy lines will carry information through a property. Yeah, I'm getting confirmation on that. So there we go. So we've got a 2 there. Okay, looking for the next item. Next detrimental EMF item, technopathic stress item. So, and then I'm going to come down this. So, right smack bang in the middle of the lounge, which I suspect is going to be a lamp. Now, you know, logic says something electrical in the middle of the room, in the middle of a space, could be a lamp. Sometimes people have these very large sort of chandelier, sort of elaborate type light fittings, and for some reason sometimes those can be a problem, or the management is just using this as an example to say, right, okay, there's an issue, there's a sensitivity to the type of lamp that they're using in the display. So there would be lots of these things would be around the house, but they're pinpointing one particular one to highlight the issue. And obviously that would be something that I would discuss with the client. I mean, this is suggesting that this is actually the case, because the pendulum is giving us a yes response in that conversation. Okay, so that's the impression I get. Obviously I'll have that conversation with the client. So let's move this, can you see? Let's go. I was very high up there. I didn't realise I was that high up off the paper. So Okay, I'm going to go across the other axis now. EMF, looking for the detrimental EMF item. I think this might be in the garage beneath. That is a feeling. See, it's right by this crossing point, 22. Last one. Going to start in the same place. Now, that's interesting, because what that was giving me was like dog barking and fencing. So I'm just going to make a note, dog barking. I'm going to put security, because that was what it felt like. So like an alarm or something like that, but it's whatever it is, it's the item is there. Now, again, the reason I close my eyes is so that I'm not influenced by where I logically think something might be on the floor plan. The impression when you start to douse a floor plan, when you've actually got your eyes closed, is that you tend to feel that your finger that you're using as the marker point to reference the dowsing is somewhere completely different on the floor plan. So when you open your eyes, you actually think, oh gosh, okay, that's where I am. I thought I was somewhere else. I actually thought I was right down here on the outside, because I was getting the impression of a security fence that says burglar alarm, that says, you know, blah de blah. So an outside area, but obviously I'm right in the middle. So what I'm going to assume at this point, and I'm going to put a question mark on security, I'm going to make an assumption, because my logic says, well, maybe that's the security interface, the interface for an alarm system, perhaps sitting there. Why is that detrimental? Why is that giving any kind of impression? I don't know. I have no idea at this stage. Again, a lot of this house healing work is the sense of what has been doused comes out in the conversation with the client, and that in itself actually is quite an important part of the healing process, because what we're talking about doing here is pulling information that we're finding using dowsing out of one dimension, because dowsing is an inner universe thing, it's in a different dimension. It's in the dimension of the 0 point field, and where all of that stuff comes in, comes out, where the management emanates from, effectively. So where our dimension is informed from. So we're pulling information out of that field into this three-dimensional dimensional existence, and part of the way of pulling that information out is by having the conversation. That's what we are. We are bridges between dimensions in that sense. None of this, of course, is scientific. This is all based upon experience, about conversations with spirit, with the management, with other people that experience similar things. None of this is scientific. And what we're working with is not scientific. What we're working with is in the intuitive, the power of the subjective experience. Do not underestimate the power of the subjective experience just because it doesn't fit in with science. Now, one of the things I just noticed was that I hadn't actually lit the candle. A candle is, for me, representing the fire elementals. So we have the basic elements of earth, air, fire and water, and there's nothing better than actually having an aspect of fire, because fire is such a great cleansing element. Some people work with dragons, believe it or not, and I really like working with dragons. I have a dragon that I do work with in the healing, and it's an interesting way of working. And to me, this actually represents that dragon energy. So, what we're going to look at now is the emotional energy points within the building. Emotional energy points are things like, we need to establish the space, the sacredness of this space. re-establish and reconnect the sacredness of the space before we continue. It is important to really pay attention to the inner world, the inner universe, when we do this sort of work, because that's the whole point. We are paying more than lip service to those aspects of our realities that exist in the dimension next to ours. It doesn't matter what labels we use to identify those aspects, whether we regard them as guardian angels or aspects of ourselves or waves of energy, but they need to be respected, and in our terminology, what we call respecting the sacred is an important part of it. A lot of the work that I show you on the channel is the superficial aspect of the connection and the process, and that is because that is what makes sense for most people. There's a danger already in things that I've said in this video that the channel will be regarded with more ridicule than it has in the past. This is a very grounded and practical way of accessing very powerful energy, and that is not to be underestimated or taken lightly. And really, the work that I do on a one-to-one basis with my clients is part of that move towards realigning them with the management, with the energies that we work with in that realm. That may not always be as serious a process as perhaps this sentence or two is suggesting, but it is of value nonetheless, and it is a healing process nonetheless. And that really is the fundamental of what we're doing in all of this work, and indeed in simply being alive in this realm. Is we have the opportunity, if we wish to take it, to heal, to develop, to process and progress on a path. The opportunity that we've been given is here for us in each lifetime. That is the sole purpose, and the purpose of the soul, and therefore that is why it is given to us, and is why it is sacred. Humanity litters the dimensions with its emotional baggage. As the planet gets more crowded and the stresses become more apparent on the surface, more emotional baggage is left in all the corners of all the houses in the world, and not just in houses, in places, in natural places, in the natural world. Never forget that the world is not what it seems. It is not the physical existence that you inhabit. It is built from the inner universe. It is the inner universe that is healing and is working through you when you choose to make progress on that particular path and make those choices which are filled with influence beyond your understanding. These are all facets that are being explored in the simple process of house healing. And so we now are allowed to get on and do what I was going to do, which is to look for the emotional energy points in this particular house. We have some here that are out of 10, 10 out of 10, minus 10 out of 10 in terms of detrimental value, and we're going to look for those. And how many of those? There are only 3 of those. There are only 3 of those, and that's just as well, because you really don't want to be living in detrimental energy that is minus 10. So we're going for, so we're going to go down this side first, but we're looking for these 3 emotional hotspots. We're just looking for the one first to start with, the first one that the management chooses to show us. Okay, well, I'm not going to share the impressions of what I was getting on that with you. That is right on the edge of that bed. Let's look for the next one. Yeah, so I kind of knew that the stairs were there, so what I'm going to put here is violence. On the stairs. Now, as I say, this is not necessarily, and I will check later, this is not necessarily action that has occurred with Alice's current family. Right, here we go for the next one. Okay, so we're going along the bottom axis first. Yeah, right. Well, so this is just outside. So again, this is another violent action. So look, these violent actions, fights, assaults, muggings, all of these sort of things, if they're they will quite often come up in other section headings. The way that I work is that these section headings are quite fluid. Okay, so I just want to thank upstairs for this particular, so thank you for just temporarily closed down while I just talk to you a second. So these aspects are fairly fluid. The section headings are fairly fluid. It gives the opportunity for the management to introduce aspects that maybe are more resonating in one particular section than another, and this is part of the experience of doing time and time again, working with the same section headings and working on different houses, is that you develop your own style, your own connection, your own interpretation of what you receive. So just to remind you what these orange lines are, which actually is interesting, isn't it, that those three are in alignment, and what we may well find is that there's like a toxic line or something like that going through there, and if we actually draw that line, I'm not going to draw it because I haven't doused it, but you would see that it goes through that crossing point there of water and earth energy. This is all adding up to a picture of more violence and a very tormented space to live in, a very difficult space to live in. So, but I think that the fact that those three are in a very direct alignment there is significant. But what we're dealing with there is emotional energy points, and emotional energy points are things like rows, fights, disagreements, grief, all of these sort of things, these detrimental aspects. So somebody that was suffering from depression, for example, might sit in one particular place and they would leave the impression of the depression in the ether, and that would be picked up. It'd be very, very unlikely that something like depression and that kind of low energy would score a -10, -10 being the highest score. Usually it's going to be something that's pretty nasty, like, fundamental negative emotion such as violence with extreme prejudice. So there we go. So we've doused two more areas. We've got EMF, technopathic stress there showing up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 items. Okay, that's that. I hope that has added a little bit. I'm not going to do many more of these videos. I don't think. I think that really we need to be reserving this sort of work into detail when I get the online course for house healing work, and that will be soon, I really, really hope. things are changing a bit. I hope you stay with me, and I hope you've enjoyed that. As usual, heavy bits, but fundamentally I think you can see the process of how dowsing works, and the next stage would be to actually remove these aspects of geopathic stress, which is done in consultation with the management. They do the actual work, as I've said many times. We simply observe, and in that sense somehow act as this bridge that actually helps healing occur. So, see you next time. Take care. Bye bye.